Dr. Beck Educational Video.
My family. I have a sister. We saw a dog.
This is a
Duck?
duck. A duck starts with D.
With that, the famous window cleaning gang sprang into action.
It's a fine bike you have there, he said to George. Would you like to help me deliver the papers?
Crickets.
Christopher and Hannah are 5 years old and in kindergarten. Their journey to reading success is well underway.
One day there was rainbow.
Interestingly, it is what they know about reading before they begin first grade that determines how well they will read at the end of first grade. This is important to know because how well they read at the end of first grade is one of the strongest predictors of their success, not just in reading, but in later ability scores, whether they stay in school, and their future earnings.
However many factors we study, we come back to the same set. How well a child moves into reading, how easily they take to reading in the first grade, depends most of all on how much they know and understand about reading when they enter first grade.
Marilyn Jagger Adams, a cognitive psychologist, has examined the findings of hundreds of studies related to beginning reading.
Pan. Hit.
She interprets these
Hat.
and explains
What children need in order to read. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J.
It's often said that the alphabet was only invented once, and embedded in that statement is a recognition that it was a truly brilliant invention. The alphabet rests on the recognition that we can categorize our speech sounds into a set that's small in number, and that each of these tiny speech sounds can be represented by a symbol, that is, by a letter in the alphabet. It really was a brilliant theoretical insight that you could take these little sounds, the inside sounds of syllables, and group them into classes and say, okay, these are B's, ba. These are C's, k. These are D's, da. And it is very much an abstract organization that we've imposed on our language. One of the strong arguments against teaching letters, letter sounds, spellings to beginning readers has been that it breaks the language up into meaningless,
Can you find another one?
unnatural units, units that don't occur in natural speech, units that don't carry meaning. People use language to convey meaning. That is, we listen to meaning through language. Language is a vehicle for meaning.
Can I use this?
We don't pay attention to language itself, and certainly not to the sounds of language. And yet learning the alphabet requires, it's a prerequisite, that you first have paid attention to these tiny little sounds inside the syllables.
D is for duck.
The child has to rediscover these categories of sounds, these phonemes that we tie with each letter. The easiest of all letter-sound correspondences are those between the initial sounds of words and the letters that are represented. And they're important because with that initial letter sound insight comes the basic logic of how this system is going to work. If you begin to think hard about the nature of reading, you'll notice that skillful readers don't look like they're attending to the separate words on the page. Instead, they behave and appear as though their reading is guided by meaning. And if they are attending to individual words, that they're taking them in at a glance, holistically, and perhaps only the important ones. Turns out, and we know this only through advances in technology and a lot of serious laboratory research, of particular importance here was the development of computer-controlled eye movement apparatuses where we could watch readers moving their eyes across meaningful text when we gave them challenges of reading for meaning or solving the mystery. We found that in fact skillful readers do fixate, that is, they read virtually each and every word of text, the big ones and the little ones. When they skip a little one, it's a word like a or of, and they visually process virtually each and every letter within each and every word. And not only that, but they automatically, irrepressibly translate the print to speech as they go. That is, they sound it out. And the reason that they neither look nor feel like that's what they do is because they do it so quickly, so automatically, so effortlessly, that all the while their conscious attention, their reflective attention, their awareness can be riveted on the message of the text. When you probe that ability, it turns out that it rests critically on their recognition of the letters within the words and their translation of those letters to speech. Now, what are the implications then for little ones? In terms of starting knowledge, the most important is clearly to have a grasp of the alphabetic principle. That is, that in English, printed words are comprised of letters, left to right, and that those letters and the spelling patterns that the letters form represent speech sounds and speech patterns of our spoken language.
How did the frog get away? Jump, frog, jump.
I think every child walks into first grade saying, now I'm going to learn how to read. And those who don't catch on, are so disappointed. And there aren't that many options. You're 6. This has been your first big challenge. What are you to think? I mean, you can think that school's stupid, reading's stupid, you're stupid, your teacher's stupid. None of these are very adaptive responses for the 6-year-old embarking on a school career. A truly sobering finding is that how well a child reads at the end of first grade turns out to be one of the strongest predictors, not just of later reading, but also of later ability scores, aptitude scores, later economic potential, whether or not the child drops out of school. That leads us to ask, what are the best predictors of how well a child will learn to read by the end of first grade? And again, after we pare the whole thing down, the best predictor of how well a child will learn to read by the end of first grade is how much she or he understands and cares about reading on entering first grade.
Would you eat them in a box? Would you eat them with a fox?
Under that umbrella of how much children know and care about learning to read, there are 3 categories of factors that have asserted themselves.
A, B, C, D.
The first category is children's familiarity with the letters of the alphabet.
What letter is it? Q.
That is, can they sing them, can they say them, can they write them, can they recognize them? And I don't mean perfectly.
What letter is it? P.
The second category of factors is their awareness of language, their awareness of, in particular, the sound structure of language. Are they aware of rhymes? Are they aware of syllables? And all of this leads, of course, to the most important issue. Are they aware of phonemes?
Find the
The sound says
Yeah, it starts with the mouse. It's the letter that starts with my name.
Remember, it's the phonemes that the letters of an alphabet represent. So you do need to be aware of their existence in order for the system to make sense at all. And then the third category of factors we can collect under the label of text awareness. And these factors are measured by, for example, whether a child knows the front of the book from the back of a book, whether a child knows when I read this story over and over again, whether the child believes my script is coming from the pictures or the black squidgy stuff on the page.
What children need, learn the letters. A, B, C.
First category is children's familiarity with the letters of the alphabet. That is, can they sing them, can they say them, can they write them, can they recognize them? And I don't mean perfectly, but their familiarity with them. The extent to which preschoolers are familiar with the letter of the alphabet strongly predicts the ease or difficulty with which they'll move into reading. Now, there's several reasons why that's true. One is that most children only learn the alphabet by playing with the alphabet. And playing with the alphabet comes hand in hand with other literary experiences, from magnetic letters on the refrigerator to book reading. It's to be expected that most children will confuse a number of letters. Well into second grade, they'll be turning their J's backwards and confusing their B's and D's. Mastery learning of the letters is not what's at issue here. Instead, it's a comfortable familiarity with them, to the extent that the children can't perceive letters as letters. Then how are they going to perceive words as a pattern of letters?
What children need, learn the sounds. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall.
The second category of factors is their awareness of language, their awareness of, in particular, the sound structure of language. Are they aware of rhymes? Are they aware of syllables? And all of this leads, of course, to the most important issue. Are they aware of phonemes? Remember, it's the phonemes that the letters of an alphabet represent. So you do need to be aware of their existence in order for the system to make sense at all.
B is also for butterfly. Put that one in. And brat and bat, right.
Phonemic awareness, the understanding that speech can be broken down into phonemes and that it's the phonemes that the letters of the alphabet represent, is an incredibly strong predictor of beginning reading. Absence or weakness in a child's awareness of these speech sounds is shown to be the single most pervasive cause of specific reading disability. And that's why it's so important in your home and your preschools to find games to play with the children to make those speech sounds interesting, that help turn the children's attention playfully and therefore with interest to the sounds of speech.
J is for jam.
Now, in this day and age, children are bombarded with print. It's everywhere. When they drive in the car, it's all over signs. When they sit at the breakfast table, it's all over boxes. The question naturally arises, how much do children learn about reading, about how print works, from being surrounded by this kind of environmental print? Interestingly, the answer seems to be not much. Children do learn to recognize words and logos that are of interest to them. They seem to learn to recognize those words as pictures, not as print. And in that context, a very common error that children often make is to think of words as pictures, to try and learn each word as a pattern. A first, and among the very most important steps towards becoming a reader, is the light bulb that says, ah, this is a puzzle. Ah, it's a system. It's not simply that this picture represents the word dog and this picture represents the word cat, but that there's a system to these pictures. The symbols within them reflect the sounds of my language. One of the very strong arguments for encouraging inventive spelling from your child or your students is to instill in them the understanding. Words are written through a series of symbols, left to right, that it is an encryption of their speech sounds. It's to help them escape from this very normal assumption that words are pictures. One of the oft expressed concerns is that when they invent their own spellings, the spellings they invent are almost always wrong by some standard.
This is a train.
They're incomplete. A C may be represented as a K. They're missing letters. So the concern arises that aren't you then asking children from the start to practice spellings that are in fact incorrect? Aren't you leading them to learn through their own practice and efforts the incorrect spellings of words? It turns out instead that by giving children lots of opportunity to do their own inventive spelling, one promotes the speed and completeness with which they learn to spell correctly. And to a large extent, this seems to be due to the fact that in spelling inventively, the children are necessarily engaged in thinking about the sounds of language and their relations to speech sounds. Phonemes are very difficult to hear sounds. If your children write independently, you may have noticed them writing, for example, the word truck with CHRK or JRK or DJRK. Feel it, the T in the beginning of truck is affricated. Truck is not a bad representation of the sound of that word. So one of the children's jobs is to find these categories of sounds and tie them to the letters. Playing with the initial sounds of words and their letter sound correspondences, that is, the B that goes with ball or the S that goes with sand, are among the most efficient entries into this understanding that letters represent sounds. They're efficient because the initial sounds of words are the easiest to hear. They're the easiest to break apart, to break off of the rest of the word.
H is for house.
On the other hand, they're not enough. The children still need to explore the sounds inside the words and learn the spellings that go with those sounds. And this requires more careful, disciplined attention. Again, inventive spelling is a good medium for developing this, because the children, as they seek to distinguish cat from car, they must find a way to represent the sounds farther into the word.
It says car. Cat, bat.
But you can help them by playing games with what are called word families, that is, rhyming words that are spelled similarly, such as cat, hat, bat, and mat. You can begin to help them generate spellings to show how it is the letters within the word that distinguish one word from another.
Pa, ilk, pilk.
No, what's the first sound, dear?
Ilk, milk.
Even among those who've caught on to the idea of the puzzle, that is, that you can sound out the letters and discover the words, some kids become so engaged with the sounding out puzzle, with a letter-by-letter translation of letter to phoneme, letter to phoneme, letter to phoneme, that they never seem to back off to notice the larger spelling pattern. Having arduously sounded out hill, they will then arduously sound out mill and will. They're just not backing off to see the larger spelling patterns. So again, work with these kinds of word families also helps to give them this insight that in fact I can begin to look at these, not letter by letter, but syllable by syllable. Skillful reading involves reading each word of text and the way in which those words are read, whether very familiar or brand new, is by reading the letters within them and translating those spelling patterns into speech patterns. That is, that skillful reading rests on automatized knowledge of phonics, basically. You know, it's not just teaching children phonics, or even finding ways to get children to learn phonics that makes a difference. It's also persuading them to use it. And it turns out that one of the big motivators is whether or not phonics is useful, worth it, in the children's very, very first texts, that is, their pre-primers. It is important that those first texts be full of decodable words. And that way you can include many more different words, which helps to stem that temptation to learn the words as pictures. If I have mat, man, and map, along with cat, hat, and rat, then it's less obvious to me that I can learn it as a picture. And in addition, you're presenting words that encourage, by their very spelling, encourage the child to examine the letters left to right, to use that alphabetic principle.
What children need, read to us. So, Miss Well.
And then the third category of factors we can collect under the label of text awareness. Under this text awareness umbrella, what determines whether a child measures high or low? Most important is surely the amount of time that that child has enjoyed books. Reading books with his parents, with his teachers, with his friends. Lap time experience, read aloud experience is so important. And probably most importantly is a way of letting them see that reading is something that they would like to do. Second, sharing books with your children is perhaps the only way to introduce them to how print works, to the forms, the appearance, the mechanics of print. They learn an awful lot as they sit there with their face in the book as you read. Third, it's also shown that read-aloud sessions are among the most powerful forums for language development, parent-child language development. And I think it's worth noting that the language of books really is different from the language of our everyday world. Books offer one of the few opportunities for children to explore things that don't exist in the here and now. And except for Uncle Pete, who may send a Christmas present, almost everything that you discuss with children is about the here and now. Pick up your shoes, put on your coat, eat your dinner, where's the cat? Books, though, not only describe people, places, and events that are not here and now, but they're the child's introduction to creating concepts and understandings through language. I can create a giraffe through my story about Africa. These are important and very heavy insights. Reading aloud with your children then is of immeasurable, invaluable importance towards sending them on their ways towards literacy. And the question arises, when should one start? Well, in fact, although you may feel ridiculous doing it, a perfectly wonderful time to start is when the child is just a couple months old. As soon as the baby can control his eyes and his head, put the baby on your lap, open the book, and begin to share. When you select books, it's very important to find books whose language and concepts are appealing to your little one. And it's worth noting that when you find a book that is of interest, your child will probably ask to have the book read again and again and again. You may grow very weary of your child's favorite book, but it's important to bear in mind that as long as the child is still asking to have that book read again and again, it means there's still pieces that she or he has not quite worked out, still pieces that are very interesting, still learning that's going on with that book. The first time, the second time, the seventh time, and every time you read through the book, the most important thing is that you stop at every indication, every invitation from the child and discuss what's interesting, how it relates to the rest of the child's world, to other things that he knows, that you discuss what the characters are doing, why, how they're feeling. It's in this way that text builds understanding. And I think that as adults, we know, if we don't explicitly appreciate, that learning through text is not what the text says, but it's the thoughts that it creates in us. Same thing is true with children, but it's much, much more important with children because they know so many bits and pieces. The challenge of putting the pieces together, the challenges of learning how to think beyond the here and now, beyond the concrete, to build these relations are among the very most important intellectual challenges.
Is this emerald?
It is emerald. It is.
This is emerald, I think.
You like that color?
Do you know what city the Wizard of Oz lives in?
The Emerald City.
Some children seem to learn to read as though by magic. Other children have great difficulty. One of the responses to the situation that I find most tragic of all is the response, well, just let them be. They'll do it when they're ready. I repeat, everything we've been able to learn about beginning reading says that it depends exactly and only on whether the child has had the experience and the thoughts to understand and move into it. We know well that even the child who's working like crazy to manage that soccer ball may well excel in the long run, provided that he neither gives up nor becomes discouraged. We should try to find the same attitude towards reading. For some children it will come like magic. For some children it will take a lot of work. But provided that they neither become discouraged or unhappy or give up, that has no bearing on how they may well excel once they get those basics down. I think it's terribly important to appreciate that literacy, that learning to read and becoming literate, is extremely complex. You can look at literacy and reading as an issue of intellectual development and thought and curiosity and personal exploration and enlightenment and start there as your focus. Or you can look at the primary challenge in reading instruction as one of unlocking literacy. It is working from the bottom up. The children have to understand the code. They have to have the key. They have to know the letters, be able to decode the letters into words. We need to put lots of energy into both ends with very careful thought about how they will meet in the middle so that they can foster each other. You want to give children the skills, the knowledge, the support.
Apple.
And while you give them those skills, build them through the love of literature, the exploration of literature, the pleasure of both information and imagination that comes from literature.
I spy with my little eye something that starts with C.
Something that starts with C.
My sister has a butt twice.
What's he doing? He handed George the bag and told him to do one side of the street first, and then turn back and do the other side.